Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Scripters over here. Welcome back to another episode of the tutorial series making you a new Roblox Scripter fledgling. Last episode we talked about the tween service and the run service and some of their uses. In a previous episode we discussed the server versus the client, how they are different, and how replication works. In this episode we are going to talk about remote events and how we can use them to have the server and client communicate with each other. We will also use them along with the tween service to make a nice looking day and night cycle. Remote events are useful to issue orders to the client to call and run functions that would be costly on the server. As we might have mentioned in the server versus client episode, the client is your PC, mobile, or device on which the game runs. It should be able to handle certain aspects of your game more smoothly. Developers use remote events for communication between the client and server. Having the client tell the server, for example, that, hey, the dude playing on me just pressed the attack key 100 times. Make sure you handle it properly. Here are his coordinates. Or, for example, having the server tell a certain client, hey, your player just received $100. Make sure to play a nice effect. Remote events, as can be noticed from the examples, communicate information such as coordinates or a certain amount like $100 relevant to the game playing. Let's go to our server script, which is in the server script service. Let's delete the previous script or code that we typed in, and let's create a remote event. We use the instance.new. Let's create a variable first, name it remote event, and set it to our remote event that we are going to create. To create a remote event, we use the instance.new function, like with most instances. Inside, we type the name of the instance we want to create, or the class of the instance we want to create, which is a remote event. This would create a remote event. Usually, developers create and set up events in the Explorer and Properties tab using the plus button. Right? They create the remote event and they set it up inside. Usually they place it in the remote storage. They set it up, they name it, they make folders, they organize it. But we're gonna create it in script to get acquainted with the code involved. Let's set the name property of the remote event we create in code to remote. And let's set the parent to the workspace using game get service workspace. Now if we run the game, let's play the game, we'll find that in the workspace we'll have a remote created or added to the workspace called or named remote. Let's stop the game and talk about some important functions and events of the remote event class instance. To send information using this remote event, we use one of the three available functions specific for sending information. The first function used to send information from a player's device or client to the server is the fire server function. It doesn't appear on the server script because this function can only be ran in a local script. This is because we are sending information from the client to the server, so from the player's device to the server. So code that runs on the player device has to be in a local script, which can, as we discussed before, only be placed in the starter player scripts folder or the relevant folders like starter character scripts or replicated first. So let's go to our local script that we created in the starter player scripts folder previously, open it, and let's reference, or let's talk about this fire server event or function. Let's recreate the variable because we don't have a reference for a remote event in this script. Remote event. As we can see, if we type in the fire server function, we can press enter and it will fill it by itself. It will appear because we are typing it in a local script. So this function only runs on a local script. Inside the parameters, we can type in any value types we want that we want to send to the server. Right? We can type in 100, true, as many as we want, and of any types we want. And those would be sent to the server. The other two functions are used to send information from the server to the client. So there is fire server, this is from the client to the server, and then from the server to the client there is fire client and fire all clients. Similar to the previous function of fire server, it sends information, but not to the server, to the client. The difference between fire client and fire all clients is that fire all clients is a function that sends information to all the devices connected, or all the players connected to the server or to this game or to the running game, right? As for fire client, this is when you want to send specific information to a specific player. For example, a specific player just hit level 100. You want them to, play a nice effect, or I don't know, maybe play a GUI animation or something. So this event or fire client function helps send information to a specific client. The first argument in the parameters should be the player that you want to send the information to. Other than that, you can type in any other arguments you want to send over. For example, 100, true, same as we mentioned, maybe even a string, hide, right? Or hit, whatever. And as we said in the first argument, it has to be a player instance. Since we don't have any player referenced in the script, it's giving us an error. But anyways, let's talk about two other important things, which are the events involved in receiving the information. So we use the functions fire server, fire all clients, or fire client to send information, right? How do we receive that information and do with it what we need to do, right? How do we receive that information and translate it into a function or something that we want to do on the device or the side that's receiving that information? We use events. Those events, remote events, have two events relative to where you want to receive the information. If you're receiving the information on the server, you need to place this event or code this event on a server script, and that event is called onServerEvent. You connect it to the function you want to run or call when the fire server function is called, right? So onServerEvent would run any code connected to the function. Let's create a function rather than typing the function inside connect. We can save it to a variable. Let's create a function using local function. Name it onServerFire, right? And inside that function, we'll just print hi, right? We can connect this to the onServerEvent event. So when the fire server function is called, this event will fire as long as we have the same remote event referenced. To reference the one we create in this server script, we would use a function. So let's reference it. It will be parented to the workspace, correct? As we typed in the code. So we know that it's going to appear in the workspace, but we don't know how long it will take until it appears. So to get it, we first have to reference it since it's a child of the workspace. So game get service workspace, it's going to be called remote, right? So we use a function called wait for child. So we're going to wait for the child that's going to appear in the workspace with the name of remote, because we don't know how long it will take to appear in the workspace. Because when you create stuff in parallel, right, you're running code over here and you're running code over here. You don't know if this code in the server script will run prior to this code in the local script. So we're going to wait for the child. So every instance has a function called wait for child, which allows you to wait until this child appears in the relevant parent instance. Now once that remote event appears with the name remote, we want to fire the server, and once it's fired, we want to print hi. So this onServerEvent allows us to receive information sent from this fire server function. We can also type in the values that we want to send over. Let's say, for example, 100. And in the function, since we're going to send this, we're going to have to type it in as a parameter. And this, let's print hi. and maybe the value we want to be sent over. So once we fire the server with the relevant argument, so we're sending over 100 as an argument, it will print hi and the value we're sending over. So let's play the game. And we got an error, which is because we have those prior functions. Let's remove fire client, because the fire client function has to have a player as an argument in the first argument, right? But since we don't have that, it's throwing an error, so let's remove it. Or let's comment it out. Let's play the game and see how hi and the value sent over is printed out. Now it didn't print 100 because there's also another thing. When you're sending information from the client to the server, you're not only sending that information. The client sends over the player sending that information automatically without you having to type it. It sends it, the player sending that information as an argument in the first argument, regardless whether you type it in or not, right? So without typing it in the fire server function, it will send the player who's sending over that information. So in the first argument, we always have to include the player when it's receiving the information on the server, right? So let's print the value. So this is gonna be player. So let's remove the hi and print the player who's sending that information as well as the value or the information that's being sent. So if we play the game, you can see that Scripter Joe, which is my player, sent information, and that information is the number value 100. Let's stop the game and let's talk about the other event. So on the server, when you want to receive information on the server, you use the onServer event. But how about when you want to receive information on the client? You use an event called onClient event. The functions and events are pretty similar, so they would help. Didn't fill it in because it doesn't know what the class of this remote instance that's going to be added is going to be. So by adding a colon and adding the class of this variable or the instance that it's referencing, it'll fill it in for us, right? So remote event.onClient event, this is the event for receiving information on the client. We want to connect it to a function. Let's create a function using local function. Name it onClient fire. And inside, we're gonna type in, for example, we're gonna send a name, right? Any name. That's gonna be the information sent to the client. And we just want to print that name when that information is sent. All right. So let's go to the server. To send over information to the client, as we said, we use one of two functions, either fire all clients or fire client. We're going to use fire all clients in this case, just because it's easier, right? If you're using the fire client, you have to type in the player involved. So you would have to reference them from the player's service, because players are added to the player service. So it would be something that looks like game get service. Let's comment this out, game get service, and it's going to be in the player service, and then it will be the name of the player that's going to be added, because they're not in the player service right now. My player isn't appearing to be filled in, right? So game get service players dot scripture Joe. That's if the player you want to send the information to, or a specific player, is Scripter Joe, right? Let's remove this, comment this out, and let's talk about remote event fire client. So if we want to send information to the client, we use fire all clients or fire client. In this case, we're using fire all clients. If we want to receive that information, we use onClient event. If the information we're sending is a name, as in this example, which is going to be a string, we can play with it and print the name, for example. We're just printing the name over here. We can do multiple stuff with strings. But over here, we're just going to type in any name. Let's say Joe. Right? So fire our clients, the information we want to send, which is Joe in this case, which is a name. And then we want to receive that information, we want to print it once it's received. Let's connect it to the onClient event event, right? So if we play the game, we'll find that nothing is printed out because the function or the remote event is created too soon, right? So let's wait because this is something that I might have mentioned in the server versus client episode, but let's just go over it again. Things run faster on the server. So if you write things or type things in a server script, they usually run before the clients or local scripts. So if you told the local script to receive information and do something with it prior, if you told the client to receive information and do something with it, it has to be done prior to that information being sent, if you get what I mean. So on the server script, you're sending the information, right? On the local script, you're receiving the information. But if you send that information before ordering the client to receive that information, nothing will be done with it. So let's wait to make sure that the fire all clients function runs after we tell the client to do something or to run the function once the client fire all clients function is called. Let's wait to make sure that it runs after it, right? So let's use task.wait. Let's wait 5 seconds, and then it will fire all clients and send the string Joe with that firing, or with that message, or with that communication, whatever you want to call it. Let's play it again. Now, if we wait 5 seconds, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. It fired all clients, and since we waited 5 seconds, it took a little bit of time, but we made sure that onClient event runs before fire all clients, and it received that information and printed it out. That's how to use the functions and events related to remote events. Now let's use remote events to create a nice looking day and night cycle along with the tween service. To do this, we need a remote event, and it doesn't matter where you place it as long as it's in a place where instances are replicated and not in the server script service or the server storage, for example. We're going to create this remote event in the lighting service. Let's add it using the plus button, remote event, and then we're going to name it tween time. And we're going to need a server script and a local script. Let's create them in the server script service. Let's create new ones. Let's name this one time manager. And let's create another local script in the starter player scripts folder. And let's name it time manager as well. In both scripts, we're going to need to reference the remote event we created in the lighting service, which is the tween time event. So let's go to our server script. Let's reference it using a variable. Let's name it tween remote and set it to game get service lighting. Lighting dot tween time. On the server side, we are going to create a while loop to update the time every 30 seconds. And let's say that a day and night in our game will each last 30 seconds. So every 30 seconds, we want to switch the time property of the lighting service from a day value to a night value and vice versa. So in the loop while true do, we will fire the remote event to all clients using fire all clients. So tween remote fire all clients. And after we fire it, or let's say before we fire it, we will wait 30 seconds. So using task.wait, we tell the computer or the server to wait 30 seconds and then fire all clients using this remote or so. In the function fire all clients, we want to place whether to change the time to night or day. So let's create a variable. Let's name it isDay, and let's set it to true, since the server will start with its lighting service time value property set to day, or a day value. And let's input this variable as information in the fire all clients function. Also, let's change the Boolean variable every 30 seconds so it's opposite. Meaning if it was true, make it false, and vice versa. We use the not statement to do this. So isDay is equal to not true or not isDay. So if the isDay variable was true, it will turn into a not true variable, which is false. And if it was false, it will become a not false value, which is true. So it will switch it every 30 seconds, and then we will tell the clients that the isDay variable has switched or changed. And that's all we need to do on the server. Now let's go to the local script, reference, or the time manager local script, right? Reference the remote event from the lighting service, but first let's create a variable for the lighting service, name it LTG, game-get-service, lighting, and let's reference that remote using a variable, tween remote is equal to LTG dot tween time. And we're going to use the on client event, Control Z, so let's remove this. Tween remote dot on client event connected to a function we want to run, which will switch the day or the time value of the lighting service, or the clock time value of the lighting service. So let's create a function, name it switch time, and connect it to this remote on client event, switch time. And the argument is going to tell us, so we're going to receive information that tells us whether it's day or not, which is going to be a Boolean. Not a bool value, rather a Boolean, right? And you can use this Boolean to set the time value to a specific value, but we're not really going to use it because we know that day and night both are equal to 12 hours. So we're going to use the tween service. First, let's reference it using tween service, game-get-tween service. And once the isDay variable changes or switches, we want the tween service to change the clock time value of the lighting service to a day or night value based on what happens, right? So the first argument would be the lighting service, which has the clock time property value. The second argument would be the tween info, basically the description of the tween we want to create. Let's say we want it to last 1 second, or let's make it 1.5 seconds. Let's be a little bit more specific. You can set the easing style to whatever you wish, but in this case I'm going to set it to elastic. And we don't need to change the other values, so we can keep them as default, so we don't have to add any more arguments. In the third argument of the create function, let's place a dictionary, the name of the property you want to change, which is clock time, and let's make it plus 12 of the current value, right? Well, actually, it might become a little there might appear certain discrepancies if we keep it like this, plus 12. So it's better to use the isDay Boolean, right, to set it to a specific value. So let's use the if statement. If isDay, so if it's true, then we want to create a tween. We didn't set it to a variable, so let's do that right now. Local tween is equal to the create function, and we want to create a tween, and we want to set the clock time, if it's day, to, let's say, 14.5, which seems to be day, right? Yes. Let's see what looks like a nice night value. Maybe 4? Yeah, 4 looks nice. Right. So let's set it to 4. Tween. Or actually, let's set it to So else, if it's day, then we want to set the clock time to 14.5. If it's night, let's set it to 14.5. Well, actually, so 24 plus 4 is basically 28. We want to set it to 28. I put it as 28 because I'm not sure if the moon or sun will come from the same direction. Let's try it out and see what happens. Let's set it to 4. So let's do this. Tween play. So you have to play the tween function if you want it to play the animation involved, right? So let's play the tween if it's day or if it's night. So now if we play the game, we'll find it's night because we set it to night. Let's change it back in the lighting service to 14.5. And let's play the game. And if we look at the sun and wait 30 seconds, I'm gonna speed this up. And it came back. So every 30 seconds it switches, which is cool. If it didn't, which I think happened, if it didn't come from the same direction, the sun and moon, you'd need to use a little bit more advanced math, but I'm not gonna cover it right now. I think you can find a way to get over it yourself. There's something called like the dev forums, other stuff, or you can ask me in the comments. I would be happy to answer. Now because it's 1.5 seconds, it's pretty fast. So let's stop the game and let's change it to something a little bit faster. So maybe, slower. Let's set it to 4.5, so times 3. And play the game. And there we go. You could change the easing style if you don't like it. There's like cubic or sine, they're both nice looking ones as well. Let's stop the game, and for the next episode we are going to talk about value instances and attributes and how they can be used. I hope you enjoyed this learning experience, and if you want to continue, be sure to watch the next video. If you want to stop here, just save your progress by pressing File, Save to File, and then name the file whatever you want and save it wherever you wish. Be sure to support the channel by giving it a thumbs up and subscribing. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions or inquiries, feel free to ask in the comments section.